The air hung heavy with the smell of exhaust fumes and desperation. John clutched his mother's hand tighter, the worn leather of her purse brushing against his knuckles.
Selling the car was a necessity, a last resort to keep a roof over our heads.
The thought sat like a lead weight in his stomach. Streetlights flickered to life as dusk settled over the city, casting long, eerie shadows.
Humming a cheerful tune.
John's mother, ever optimistic, tried to lighten the mood. He offered her a weak smile, his heart heavy with a premonition he couldn't quite place. A sudden movement in a nearby alleyway made John's blood run cold. A figure emerged, shrouded in shadow, his hand gripping something metallic. Fear, sharp and cold, shot through John's veins. "Don't move!" the figure snarled, his voice raspy and laced with menace. John's mother gasped, her eyes wide with terror. In a heartbeat, the world exploded in a deafening roar. John watched in numb horror as his mother crumpled to the ground, a crimson stain blooming on her chest. The world seemed to spin, the sounds of the city fading into a dull roar. His legs gave way and he knelt beside her, his hand trembling as he reached for her face.
"Mom?"
He choked out, his voice raw with disbelief. Her eyes, once filled with warmth and love, stared vacantly at the sky. The cheerful tune she had been humming died on her lips, replaced by a silence more profound than any scream. The world narrowed to the agonizing slowness of his mother's breath, each one shallower than the last. Then, with a final shuddering gasp, she was gone, and John was utterly alone. The police arrived, sirens wailing, their faces grim as they took statements and cordoned off the area. But all John could see was his mother lying lifeless on the cold, unforgiving pavement. Her blood stained his hands, a grim reminder of what he had lost. Grief, raw and all-consuming, threatened to drown John. He moved through the motions of his life, a hollow shell of the boy he had been. Sleep offered no escape, his nights haunted by nightmares of his mother's murder. Anger, a burning ember in the pit of his stomach, slowly began to eclipse the grief. He clung to it, fueled by the injustice of his mother's death.
"I will find the man who took her from me. I will make him pay."
John scoured the city, chasing every lead, every whisper in the wind. He memorized the face of the man from the police sketch, burning it into his mind. He would know him anywhere. He would have his revenge. The police investigation, bogged down by bureaucracy and a lack of leads, eventually went cold. But John refused to give up. He had nothing left to lose except the burning need for vengeance that consumed him. 3 years turned into a lifetime. John became a ghost haunting the city's underbelly, searching for any trace of his mother's killer. He took on odd jobs, his youthful innocence replaced by a hardened edge, his eyes reflecting a world-weariness beyond his years. Dead ends became his constant companions. Every flickering hope, every whisper of a lead led to nothing but disappointment and renewed determination. The city, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, hiding the monster who had stolen his mother from him. John honed his anger, shaping it into a weapon. He trained, his body becoming lean and hard, his movements honed to a razor's edge.
"I will be ready when I finally find him. I will be the instrument of my own justice."
But the years wore on him, each day a painful reminder of his promise. Doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Was he chasing a ghost? Had the city swallowed his mother's killer whole? One rainy night, while working as a bartender in a seedy part of town, John overheard a conversation.
A group of men, their faces hidden in the shadows, spoke in hushed tones about a recent heist.
The description of the ringleader sent a chill down John's spine.
The tattoo on his left hand, a coiled serpent bearing its fangs, was unmistakable. The man in the police sketch.
John's blood ran cold. He had a name now, Salvatore Viper Rizzo. And he was not just a random thug. He was a high-ranking member of the notorious Diavolo crime family.
Despair threatened to consume me. I was outmatched, outgunned, and alone. How could I possibly hope to bring down a powerful mobster like Rizzo?
But then a cold fire ignited in his heart.
I would not let fear deter me. I would become the monster to fight the monster. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed an army of my own.
John immersed himself in the city's underworld. He sought out the lost and forgotten, those who had also been touched by violence and betrayal.
He offered them a purpose, a chance for revenge against the very people who had wronged them.
He found strength in their shared pain, their hunger for justice. They were a motley crew, united by their loyalty to John and their thirst for vengeance.
He trained them, honed their skills, and instilled in them the same unwavering determination that burned within him.
Word spread like wildfire through the criminal underworld. A new gang was on the rise, led by a ghost from the past. A young man with ice in his veins and vengeance in his heart.
They called themselves the Reapers, and they were coming for the Viper.
2 years of planning, training, and strategizing culminated in this moment. John looked at the faces of his crew, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the warehouse they were about to storm.
He knew that some of them might not make it out alive, but they were willing to die for their cause.
For their leader. For their chance at retribution.
The abandoned warehouse stood like a monolith against the night sky, its broken windows like the vacant eyes of a skull. Inside, Salvatore Viper Rizzo celebrated his latest triumph, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon.
John, his face hidden behind a black balaclava, checked his weapon one last time. The air crackled with tension as he raised his hand, the signal for the assault.
The silence of the night shattered as the Reapers stormed the warehouse, their battle cries echoing through the desolate building. Gunfire erupted, a deadly symphony of chaos and destruction.
John, a wraith in the darkness, moved with deadly precision, cutting down anyone who stood in his path.
His crew fought with the fury of cornered animals, their desire for vengeance fueling their every move.
The warehouse became a slaughterhouse, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. John, his heart pounding in his chest, fought his way to the inner sanctum where he knew he would find the Viper. The door burst open, revealing a scene of opulent decadence. Rizzo, caught off guard, scrambled for his weapon, his face contorted in a mask of rage and fear. But it was too late.
"You took everything from me," John growled, his voice barely a whisper above the ringing in his ears.
Rizzo, his bravado shaken but not broken, laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can kill me? You're nothing but a street rat, a nobody."
John's finger tightened on the trigger, his entire being focused on the man who had destroyed his life.
"This isn't about power, Rizzo," John said, his voice cold and steady. "This is about justice."
Rizzo lunged for his gun, but John was faster. A single shot rang out, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Rizzo crumpled to the ground, a look of surprise etched on his face. He coughed, blood bubbling up his throat, his eyes wide with the realization that his reign of terror was finally over. John stood over the dying mobster, his expression unreadable. The warehouse was eerily silent now, the echoes of gunfire fading into the night. He had done it. He had avenged his mother's death. But the victory felt hollow, the taste of it as bitter as ash in his mouth.
This would have never happened if you hadn't interfered," Rizzo gasped, his voice a raspy whisper.
John stared down at him, his face a mask of cold indifference. The man's dying words meant nothing to him. He felt no remorse, only a weary sense of finality.
"This is your fault," John stated coldly, pressing the barrel of his gun against Rizzo's forehead. "And now, you die."
A pull of the trigger, a splatter of blood, and then silence. John holstered his weapon, the metal cold against his skin. He turned to face his remaining crew, their faces pale and drawn in the flickering light.
"It's over," he said, his voice devoid of emotion.
He walked out of the warehouse, his steps heavy, his soul wearier than he could have ever imagined. As he stepped into the cool night air, he looked up at the starless sky and whispered,
"Mother, I have finally avenged you."
but the words rang hollow in the silence of his grief.